When you think of violence in films, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Maybe it's blood and gore, maybe it's an action movie, or maybe it's just any Quentin Tarantino film ever made. For me, honestly, personally speaking, in my humble opinion, I just think of fun. Like Tarantino said before,
because it's so much fun, Jan! Get it?
it feels like the overall stigma surrounding violence in movies is that it's used as a form of entertainment, and for good reason. As much as I am a pacifist, I can't deny that watching violence in films is just so entertaining. There's something about the action of it that appeals to my baboon brain, that ticks off the dopamine receptors. And let's be honest, this is the same for everyone else. With film franchises like John Wick making as much money as they do, it seems like audiences actively look for these kinds of movies in theaters. Hell, I watched John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum in theaters with my dad. My point is that we, the audience, and in turn Hollywood, almost seem to glorify violence for entertainment, for fun, which, if you think about the real world, that's kind of messed up. Like, since when has violence been something fun to do? When has bloodshed been something we actively look forward to watching? When has death been something we find entertaining? This is the very idea Mikhail Haneke's 1997 film Funny Games aims to discuss. Centering around a family, Georg, Anna, and Georgi, staying at their vacation home, they find themselves being visited and then tortured by two young men, Paul and Peter. This is the only thing I knew about the film before watching it, and to say that it oversimplifies the film would be an understatement. It almost makes it seem like the very movies it aims to criticize, but that's entirely by design to give us that false sense of security. Just from the opening, Funny Games wants us as uncomfortable as possible, detracting from this beautiful scenery of calming, relaxing, diegetic classical music with this grungy, bombastic, non-diegetic jazz song, Bonehead by Naked City. Coupled with the large, red title card, it helps set that dichotomy between the expected fun vacation trip and the actual horror of their future conflict. The costuming also plays a role in this, with the intruders wearing the color white, which in most cases symbolizes purity, cleanliness, and peace, as we envision angels or doves. Crucially, however, it can also symbolize emptiness and coldness. Think of an empty hospital room, for example. When we meet the two for the first time, they give off that friendly, cordial personality that's often infectious. But as we see them on screen more and more, we notice irregularities in their actions and begin to question them. When Anna goes to get towels to clean up the eggs she gave to Peter, who dropped them, he looks around the house, almost like he's scouting the area. When he leaves with a second batch, we see he never actually left because of the dog, and out of nowhere, Paul is with him too. They then bombard Anna with all these requests, like taking the golf club for a test drive. The dog Rolfie, who's been barking for the entire time, suddenly goes quiet after a weak whimper. At the sound of this, Georg goes to check out what's going on, causing a knife to fall onto the floor of the boat. Remember this. As she tries to get the two to leave, she comes to the house to make sense of the conflict. It's here when we finally see their true color, their true nature, as after he slaps Paul for his aggressive tone, Georg gets hit in the leg with a golf club by Peter, dislocating his knee completely. Although it's linked with the horror genre, it often goes against the common tropes, the main one being the overall intelligence of the characters. Like many other horror films, the characters here pretty much do the smart thing every single time. We often get frustrated with these films because the protagonists never do the smart thing that would save them, whether it be sticking together or getting weapons. Here it's frustrating because they're doing everything right, yet they still lose. Just the cat and mouse chase between Georgie and Paul demonstrates this frustration. For a 10-year-old child, his intuition and composure are incredible. Whenever he's confronted with an obstacle, he acts accordingly, like when he enters the Berliners' home. After walking through the lake, he takes off his shoes and pants to avoid making any trails. He carefully avoids showing the shadows of his feet when Paul turns on the lights in all of the rooms. When he sees a rifle, he, without hesitation, grabs it, arming himself. When he's caught, he aims it at Paul, but because he doesn't know how to operate the gun, he can't shoot him, being brought back to the house. It's hard watching this scene because he's done everything right, but because of something he couldn't possibly have known, he can't finish the job. One of the filmmaking techniques Haneke is an absolute master at is the long shot, that one take. While many filmmakers are great at these, with Alfonso Cuarón coming to mind, often films will implement these shots just for the wow factor of it. While the use in the film 1917 is technically impressive, it doesn't really affect the feeling of the film. It doesn't drastically change the impact of how we feel watching it. When Georgie is sadly shot in the head, we of course feel the weight of the situation given the subject matter, but that feeling grows more and more intense as the camera just sits there and stays on Anna and Georg. as they take in the situation themselves. In the 11-minute shot, the overall state of everything gets to us. If I edited this scene, taking out the long shot and shortening it, it would feel completely different. With a film like 1917, I could edit it to not be one shot, and the feeling of the film wouldn't differ too much. By dragging the length of this scene, it makes the pain we're feeling watching the film match the pain the two feel living through it, while making it feel more realistic. Probably the most damning scene in this film is when Anna grabs the shotgun and shoots Peter, killing him and upsetting Paul. We finally get that sense of victory and triumph. Like the characters, we've endured through so much pain and suffering, so to see Anna finally get revenge on them is so satisfying to us as the audience. As Paul frantically looks for the TV remote, we're almost celebrating this feat and laughing at him, until he reverses the film back to when she grabs the gun, this time taking it from her, saying, "You can't break the rules." In the one moment reminiscent of what we typically see in film violence, Haneke tells us, "No, I will not give you the satisfaction you desire." With this switch up, we instead get more loss as Georg is shot, killing him. It's important to note that Haneke has been hiding this violence, with most of the deaths happening off-screen. When Rolfi is beat to death by Paul, we only hear his cries of pain and see the barn. When Georgi is shot in the head, the camera is fixated on Paul in the kitchen. We never even get to see Georg's death, as like father like son, he's shot off screen as well. With only on-screen death being taken away from us like that, it really feels like the film is toying with our emotions and challenging our conceived perception of violence as fun. This also isn't the first time Paul breaks the fourth wall. During the duration of the film, he's been periodically looking directly into the camera, even speaking to the audience at some points. When thinking about breaking the fourth wall, it's often to address the audience directly and involve them in a friendly, inviting manner. My favorite example being from Spaceballs. Here he taunts our sympathy, knowing we're by default on the family side. When Anna looks for Rolfi, Paul smirks at the camera and winks before she finds him in the back seat of the car. When he's briefing the family on the game they're gonna play, he turns to the audience and says,
"Was meinen Sie? Denken Sie, Sie haben eine Chance zu gewinnen? Sie sind doch auf Ihrer Seite, oder? Also, auf ihn setzen Sie."
While Paul is the one speaking, it really feels like Haneke is the one taunting us. In an interview, he stated the following: "Anyone who leaves the cinema doesn't need the film, and anybody who stays does. Because in the end, it's all about you, the audience. And I wanted to show how violence is used in the media, how it is consumed and glorified, and how the viewer plays a role in that. It's no wonder this film is divisive amongst audiences. It seems like you either love the film or completely despise it. The people who understand the film see Haneke's vision and praise the genius of the film. People who don't, however, see it as Haneke torturing them, essentially calling him a sadist. This review in particular goes over exactly what I described. They expected to see the relief that's common in these films, yet it never came. Now, I wouldn't call Haneke a disgrace to filmmaking, but I can understand their position. Like many, they're used to the cookie-cutter style of filmmaking that almost requires a film like this to have that break, so the characters, but more importantly the audience, can catch their breath. But where's the boldness in that? What's the point of watching something that plays out the same as any other film? The reason I admire Haneke as a director is that he's never afraid to tell a story that's upsetting and many times controversial. I want to watch a movie that'll make me think, that'll provoke a certain response in me, and that won't happen if you play by the rules of filmmaking. Not even Chekhov's gun can save Anna, as she can't cut the ropes with the knife dropped earlier. In the end, the two throw her into the lake before visiting the same couple that visited the family, repeating the violent cycle all over again. That's exactly what Haneke is trying to say. Violence is a never-ending cycle, and we're not doing anything to fix it by flooding these films with bloodshed. So let me ask this again. When you think of violence in films, what's the first thing that comes to mind?